My name is Avery Callahan, and 2 weeks before Christmas, I was told not to come home. The text came in at 8:13 a.m. sharp while I was reviewing quarterly projections in my office on the 36th floor of the Loop. Avery, we think you should rest this Christmas. Victoria wants the dinner to be small. Just family. I stared at the message long enough to taste the irony in my coffee. My family had just uninvited me from Christmas. I read it again and typed back. Just to clarify, I'm family. Right? The typing dots blinked, vanished, then returned. Of course you are. Honey. But Victoria's family is traditional. She's nervous about differences in lifestyle. I almost laughed. At that exact moment, the wire transfer, confirming our Series C funding $160 million, flashed across my monitor. Noted. I wrote, and set my phone face down beside the contract that officially made my company one of the fastest-growing startups in Chicago. Hannah, my COO, appeared in the doorway holding 2 coffees. Bad news or family news? She asked, scanning my face. Same category, I said. She raised a brow, and I added, they don't want me at Christmas dinner. Her silence was almost gentle before she whispered, they have no idea. Do they? I shook my head. None. And that's the point. Doggum. For a moment, I watched the city glitter through the glass. The streets below slick with snow and self-importance. Every window reflected someone who believed they knew what success looked like. I didn't bother to argue with my family. I had outgrown the need for witnesses. I slid the phone into a drawer and said to no one in particular, if they think I'm between jobs, they'll find out soon enough what I've been building. I called my mother that night, and she answered with the soft guilt of someone already rehearsing her excuses. Avery, please don't take it personally, she said quickly. Victoria's just worried about appearances. I asked if appearances meant pretending I didn't exist. She sighed the way she always did when cornered, and replied, you know how sensitive she is. Her family moves in a different circle. Gid. I could hear the television in the background. My father's voice cutting through. Avery. Don't start, he said. Victoria's family are investors. People of status. Evan's trying to make a good impression. I asked. By lying about me? He cleared his throat. The same sound he used before delivering financial advice no one asked for. And said, he just simplified things. No need to dramatize. The word simplified landed heavier than it should have. It meant edited, erased, rewritten. I told them I wasn't angry. Just curious what part of me was so inconvenient. My mother said gently, you've always been intense. Honey, you make people nervous. I said. Maybe they should be. My father muttered something about how success was also about knowing when to stay quiet. And I replied, I've been quiet for 6 years. How's that been working out for you? The silence afterward had weight, like a room closing its own door. When the call ended, I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. The reflection of my face too composed to match the static under my ribs. It wasn't heartbreak. It was documentation, another entry in a long pattern of being asked to shrink. I thought about how often people confuse politeness with cruelty wrapped in lace. Every time they said, don't make a scene. What they meant was, stay small enough to ignore. And I finally realized they weren't protecting me from embarrassment, they were protecting themselves from comparison. I didn't respond to their silence. Explaining myself to people committed to misunderstanding me felt like performing for an audience that had already left. Hannah noticed the tension the next morning and asked, are you really letting this go? I told her. I'm not letting it go. I'm letting it unfold. She looked at me the way people do when they sense there's more beneath the sentence. but she didn't press further. That week, I called Patrick, my attorney, and said, I need a clean record of our capital flow every dollar. Every equity note. He asked if I was expecting an audit. Not yet, I said. But someone will want proof soon. Then I called our accountant for a one-page summary of my holdings company shares. Real estate. Cash. Royalties. When the document arrived, I printed it, signed it, and locked it away. Numbers have no loyalty. But they don't lie either. Later that night, Hannah came into my office. Her voice careful. The Forbes interview team confirmed their release date December 25th. 6 a.m. Eastern. They'll lead with your story. I nodded, tracing the corner of the printed cover mock-up. You're not telling your family, are you? She asked quietly. I said, no. They'll find out the same way everyone else does. She exhaled slowly. Part disbelief. Part admiration. That's going to hit hard. I smiled, just enough to mean it. Only because it's true. When the building emptied, I sat alone under the low hum of fluorescent lights. The skyline sharp against the glass. Success, I realized, isn't loud, it's a pulse that waits for the right silence to echo in. My family thought I was hiding out of shame. But what I was really doing was preparing evidence. They wanted a version of me small enough to dismiss. And I let them keep it. The truth was never mine to defend. It was theirs to discover. The morning of December 25th began in silence, broken only by the click of my coffee maker. At 6 sharp, my inbox lit up with the subject line I'd been waiting for. Forbes Healthcare cover feature. Avery Callahan, CEO of Cytera Diagnostics. The first line read, in just 2 years, she built a billion-dollar diagnostics company redefining how hospitals detect disease. I said to no one, Merry Christmas, and opened the full article. 10 minutes later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Is this Avery Callahan? A woman asked. Her tone tight but polite. Yes, it is, she said. This is Margaret Bennett, Victoria's mother. My husband just showed me this Forbes article. Are you the Avery Callahan featured on the cover? I said. That's correct. There was a pause so long I could hear her breathe. So you're the sister of Evan Callahan. The man engaged to my daughter? I said yes again. And the silence that followed sounded almost like disbelief, rearranging itself into shame. Her voice lowered. I don't think I've ever experienced such a surprise. We were told you were between jobs. Victoria was worried about what she called a lifestyle mismatch. I replied. That's one way to describe it. She hesitated, choosing her next words with surgical care. It seems your brother and parents misrepresented a few things. My husband and I are discussing this right now. I wanted to confirm it was really you. I told her, it is. I hope your family enjoys the read. She murmured. Enjoy isn't quite the word. I think we'll need a new conversation about integrity. I answered softly. That's long overdue. Too white. When the call ended, I set the phone beside the open magazine and watched the daylight stretch across the lake. My inbox was already filling with congratulations. But I kept checking the one thread that stayed empty, the family group chat. They were still at brunch, still pretending I didn't exist. Unaware that the version of me they had erased was now sitting on every breakfast table in America. I didn't need to picture their faces. The quiet was proof enough. Some revelations don't explode, they hum beneath the surface until the people who built the lie finally hear it crack. By 10 that morning, the first call came through. Evan's name flashing across my screen like an alarm. What the hell did you do? He shouted before I could answer. I said, Good morning to you too. He snapped. You just humiliated me in front of Victoria's entire family, I asked. By existing? His voice cracked under the noise behind him. They're furious. Her father walked out of brunch. Mom's crying. Dad's trying to fix it. But you've made us look like liars. I said, You didn't need my help for that. Why? He exhaled sharply. You could have told us you were doing this Forbes thing. I replied. You could have told them I wasn't unemployed, he said. I was trying to protect you. I asked. From what? The risk of being visible? He stuttered something about misunderstanding. Then added, You made me look stupid. I said, No. You did that when you erased me to impress your fiancé. There was a pause where I could almost hear the realization land. You think you're better than everyone now? He hissed. No. I said. I just stopped pretending we're equal. I was. Then my father's voice replaced his. Avery. Enough. He said. Your mother's upset. And Evan's engagement is falling apart. You need to help us fix this. I asked. Fix what? Exactly. The lie or the consequence, he said. This is family business. I answered. I wasn't invited to that business. He raised his tone. You're being selfish. I said. No. I'm being consistent. You wanted distance. Now you have it. 8. When the call ended, I didn't feel triumph. Only confirmation. The people who had once called my silence disrespectful were now begging me to explain myself. But explanations are a form of permission, and I was done granting any. I placed the phone face down and let it buzz itself into exhaustion. Some families teach love through affection. Mine taught it through damage control. They showed up 3 days later without warning, walking into the lobby like investors who'd lost an invitation. My assistant's voice trembled when she called to say, Your parents are here. I told her to send them to the conference room and asked Patrick and Hannah to join me. When I walked in, my father was already standing, and my mother was sitting with folded hands. The posture of someone trying to look reasonable. My father spoke first. Was the lawyer necessary? He asked. Glancing at Patrick, I said, This is my workplace. Everyone in this room belongs here. My mother cut in. Avery. Please. We're not your enemies. I replied. Then stop acting like shareholders who missed the first round. My father's jaw tightened. You've embarrassed this family, he said. Everyone at the club is asking how we didn't know about your company. I said, Maybe because you didn't ask. Dawn. My mother's tone softened. We came to make things right. You've done something extraordinary. And we're proud. But it would look strange if your own parents weren't somehow involved. I asked. Strange for who? She hesitated. For people who know us. For your investors. They'll wonder why your father isn't advising you. I looked at Patrick. Then back at her. He doesn't work in biotech. My father snapped. Business is business. I have 40 years of financial experience, I said. And not a single hour of mine. Oh. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. I want a seat on your advisory board. A symbolic one. You need family representation. I answered. I have representation legal, operational, and ethical, he said. Don't talk to me like I'm one of your employees. I said. Then stop showing up like one? My mother reached for calm. We just want to be part of your success. I said. You weren't part of the work. Another. She blinked fast. Caught between guilt and pride. We supported your education. That counts for something. I slid the envelope across the table. That's why I've repaid it. My father frowned. What is this? I said. A check for $400,000. Tuition. Room. And board plus interest. I've rounded up. He pushed it back. We don't want your money, I said. Then we're square. Is not, my mother whispered. You can't buy your way out of family, I said. I'm not buying out. I'm closing the account. My father's voice hardened. You're throwing away blood, I said. I'm keeping my boundaries. You confused the two. He stood. Anger replacing persuasion. You'll regret this arrogance someday, I said. No. I regret giving you permission to mistake silence for permission. Is too created. When they left, the room stayed heavier than before. Hannah watched me gather the envelope they'd refused and asked, You okay? I said. Better than they are. The truth didn't feel triumphant. It felt balanced. For once, every number lined up exactly where it belonged. And so did I. Evan called a week later. His voice stripped of the confidence he used to wear like armor. Victoria ended it. He said flatly. I asked, Because of me or because of the truth? He said. Her father told me a man who lies about his own sister can't be trusted in business or marriage. I answered. Sounds like he understands integrity better than you do. He tried to blame the article. But what broke him wasn't my success. It was the reflection of his own cowardice. My mother called next. Your father's worried, she began, her voice trembling with practiced guilt. The family's in shock. And we all need time, I said. You had years, she whispered. You've changed, I told her. No. I stayed the same. You just never looked long enough to see it. She asked if we could start over. And I said, Start what? Exactly? Pretending again? The line went quiet except for the sound of her breathing. That old rhythm of denial. When the calls stopped, peace finally became audible. The company grew. Investors tripled. And the press moved on. But my family stayed frozen in the version of me they created, unemployed. Invisible. Disposable. I didn't correct them then. And I wouldn't now. Some people only learn when silence replaces explanation. The irony was that they taught me everything I needed to know about detachment. I just applied it better. Hannah once asked if it ever felt lonely being right. I said, Not really. Being underestimated is the loneliest place. Everything after that feels like freedom. And I meant it. My family had lost the privilege of misunderstanding me. And that was its own kind of justice. I didn't ruin them. I simply stopped protecting their illusion. Cytera went public that summer. The opening bell echoing like punctuation on everything I'd survived. I bought a small house near the lake, adopted a dog, and sent my parents a Christmas card that simply said, Hope you're well. It wasn't forgiveness. It was closure written in lowercase. For the first time, my life felt quiet enough to hear itself. No apologies. No explanations. Just the steady sound of peace that no one could revoke.